Hello, good afternoon. All having a good time, I hope. It's hard to see past the very bright lights up here. But yes, I want to speak about MicroCab, the company which I formed as a spin-out from Coventry University. And I want to reflect on the state of our transport and our mobility systems, particularly in the urban environment. MicroCab was founded in 2004, but my background is in motorsport. I was working in motorsport for 15 years before I sort of hit an eco moment when living in London and decided to move away from engines, internal combustion engines, and towards clean drive. The company is formed as a spin-out from Coventry University, and Coventry University remains a shareholder in the company. And we do joint projects with the university, and they support us with a technical team to help with our research and development. Now, our mission statement is about the new mobility. We see, we're not just talking about changing powertrains from dirty engines to clean electric. That would solve one problem, but it would not solve the others, and the others are as deeply entrenched as the emissions problem. But we see a new mobility where alternative designs of zero emissions platforms come together with intelligent systems and shared resources to give us a modern mobility and transport system that we can all share and use. And I think that's very important, that we're not just talking about cars here. Now, let's just step back a bit. Mobility is absolutely fundamental to human existence. It's a driver of human existence. It's something that we've always had to do, and it's been part of human development. If we think of walking, we have our basic human mobility method is walking. And then over time, that's been augmented by adding to it, say, the donkey, the camel, the horse, and then a sledge and a canoe and a sailboat, and on we go through time. And then as the wheel is invented, we add the cart and the carriage and the chariot and so on. And moving on then through to the Industrial Revolution, where motorized transport is added to the mix. So we get the bicycle and the motorbike, the train, the tram, the bus, the car, the truck, the taxi, the aeroplane, the ship, and the drone and the spacecraft, and on it goes. You can see that it's a fundamental part of human existence to move. Now, if we look at the situation with cities, cities are a peculiar case in point, and they are the areas with most densely populated people, and also the most densely populated travel and transport systems. And as over the last 2 or 3 decades, the population of the cities has been growing and growing until now more than 50% of the world's population lives in the urban environment, and that is destined to grow as the years go on as well. And within the city, of course, we have the extensive transport systems, but from the 1900s onwards, virtually all of that transport system has been powered by the internal combustion engine, and of course with the oil that supports it too. And that has, of course, brought problems, which we're all very, very familiar with. Air quality problems, which are talked about almost weekly on the news and so on, congestion that goes with it. And this is largely because we've allowed the transport systems to increase without properly planning what's going to happen to them and so on. And of course, this has very damaging effects to human health. We see the increase in the lung disease, heart disease, and so on in correlation to the quality of our air. It's not just that side of the emissions, the congestion, the urban blight caused by traffic, people living and working near traffic. It's dangerous, it's noisy, it's unpleasant. You don't want your children to have to go near traffic for all these reasons. So something needs to happen. And I talked about the new mobility. We are in the dawning of a new age of mobility where everything is really changing. We're seeing better urban planning with more provision for the pedestrian, more pedestrianised areas. We're seeing proper provision for cycling across many cities, It's not a complete picture yet, but it is happening. And we're seeing a greater move towards walking and cycling as the environment for those ways of getting about is improved. And that's very, very important. You've got to give people a chance to use the systems that are there to improve their environment. Then you have more green spaces being created in urban areas, more parks to sit at lunchtime and to enjoy the space, enjoy the city can be a very enjoyable place, it can be an aesthetic place, but not if it's blighted by traffic and by pollution. The reduction in traffic speeds as well, the 20 is plenty campaign, is very, very good. It reduces the danger of vehicles. Slowing vehicles down helps people to be, and cyclists and so on, to be at one with those vehicles. The higher the speed, the greater the danger, of course. And we're also seeing a new raft of mobility devices. We're seeing new strange bicycles, we're seeing electric scooters, we are seeing electric skateboards and all kinds of wheels that go under your feet to whisk you through the city. And I think all this is changing the whole picture of where we're going with mobility in the city. Now, MicroCab's place in all this, we belong in this new mobility space. Okay, we are in the sort of car end of it, if you like, but we believe in alternative mobility. We believe in having car clubs where we share mobility. We like the bike clubs where you go to a city, you borrow a bicycle, and you put it back when you're finished. I belong to Zipcar, and you borrow the car for an hour or two, or a day, or half a day, and you put it back when you've finished with it, and you haven't got the bother of owning the vehicle. And the problem with ownership of those vehicles is that an owned car generally is on the road 1 hour of the day and parked for 23 hours of the day. And this is unsustainable. It gives us, we have large areas of cities taken up with car parking for that very reason. All day that you're at work, your car is stuck in the car park, etc. Or if you go by train, the car is at home. So for all these reasons, the mobility systems need to change. And we support all those sharing and circular economy type of uses. We're also developing intelligent transport systems which tell the user when they are driving more green. For instance, this system here called Lightfoot, which we implement, and it basically is a simple sort of gamified system of telling you when you're driving green and not so green, and it helps to make the vehicle even more efficient than they already are. Let's talk a little bit about hydrogen, because I did say at the beginning that our preferred sort of powertrain is a hydrogen fuel cell electric powertrain. Now, hydrogen is an interesting substance. It's a very energy-dense material, and it's very common in the universe, and it can be sourced from a range of different materials. It can come from natural gas, which of course is a fossil fuel, but it can also come from water. You can electrolyze water, split it into hydrogen and oxygen, and store the hydrogen off. And you can use renewable energy to do that, and that's very important, because renewable energy, be it solar or wind or other, is intermittent. It goes up and down, and it might be that it's very windy in the middle of the night when you can't use all the electricity, but you could store it. You could store it by splitting water into hydrogen and oxygen, and you can use the resultant hydrogen later. You can use it to inject hydrogen into the natural gas grid. You can mix it with natural gas to help to green the fossil gas that we use. It can be mixed and burnt with in the heating system or in the cooking systems in your home. In fact, if you go back to the days before natural gas, when we had town gas in our homes, more than 50% of town gas was hydrogen. So it's not like it's something totally new. It's been around in use in industry and in domestic use for a long, long time. And as I said before, we can store it off and use it for a transport fuel. This is some idea of a kind of electric hydrogen grid that could be established, for instance. Now, the growth of the hydrogen economy. If we look at Germany and California, we look at Japan, South Korea, and China, we see those countries pushing ahead with the hydrogen infrastructure. They are leading the way, those countries. Here, I am with one of our vehicles opening the 51st hydrogen station in Germany. So we've already got, there's quite a large number of stations in Germany, and that one is in Frechen, which is near Cologne in Germany. So we can see that the Germans are pushing ahead with that. If we look at the UK, I mean, the UK is also developing a hydrogen infrastructure, obviously partly to do with companies like mine that want hydrogen to work with their vehicles. We have a station here in Coventry, for instance. This picture shows a wind turbine, and that is a hydrogen station in Sheffield. And it uses that wind turbine to split water into hydrogen and into oxygen, and the hydrogen is used to refuel vehicles. So that's part of that same process. Now we're seeing the big OEMs producing fuel cell electric cars and starting to deliver them out now to users. And we're also seeing the development of fuel cell trucks, heavy-duty goods vehicle trucks, and in America and in Japan and in China. And we're also seeing the first fuel cell electric trains running in Germany just this year. And the British government is also talking about fuel cell electric trains to replace the diesel trains where the line is not electrified. So we can see that there's a sort of gathering up of hydrogen elements, and it's the way that hydrogen mixes from transport to industry to renewable energy to domestic use and so on, which means it's a very interesting energy vector, something which can carry the energy around and deposit it where it's needed. So let's have a little look at the MicroCabs vehicle's powertrain. It starts with a fuel cell, 3.5 kilowatt fuel cell. Do you know what a fuel cell is? Maybe not. Anyone know what a fuel cell is? Hands up. No? Okay. Oh yes, one there. Good. Well, a fuel cell is a device which actually makes electricity, and it uses hydrogen from the tank on the car, oxygen from the air. They combine together in the fuel cell and produce water, H2O of course, and electricity. And that's how we generate the power for the vehicle. It goes into a lithium-ion battery pack, or it's used straight to the electric motor. So it's a completely clean drive, and the emission is water, pure water. We have electric motors to give traction to the vehicle, and we store the hydrogen gas at quite high pressure on the vehicle, either 350 bar or 700 bar. And the vehicle's top speed is 55 miles an hour. The range is about 200 miles on what is a very small quantity of fuel. And the important thing about hydrogen is it can be transferred from one place to another quite quickly because it's a gas. For instance, our vehicles fill in about 3 minutes, and then you're off again for another 200 miles. So I think that's very important. But the other most important thing about this is the efficiency of the vehicles. They are highly efficient vehicles. Now, where can we see MicroCab vehicles? Well, there's a selection of places here. I think that the importance about this is that these are places where we can find hydrogen. Coventry, as I mentioned, has a hydrogen station not far from here. Birmingham has one. Sheffield, I showed you the wind turbine at Sheffield, so you can see that there. London has quite a few stations. It's becoming a clustering effect going on in London with half a dozen stations or so now. The Isle of Wight doesn't have a permanent hydrogen station, but we went there to do the Round the Isle of Wight challenge, where we drove round in the car and a hydrogen boat powered its way around the coast in competition with us. And then we're going to places in Europe nearby, perhaps Rotterdam. We have a vehicle operating in Brussels, as you can see there, with the Atomium picture, and also Cologne. We were in Cologne and Liège too. So these are the places that we have been operating recently as part of European Union projects we're in. We've been working as well with a large German OEM, supplying them with some vehicles because they wanted to develop a 48-volt electric drive car. And what's important about this is that company builds internal combustion engines. They are a huge company with 77,000 employees. They make hundreds of thousands of engines every year. But of course, the writing's on the wall, and these companies need to find a way into the new mobility. Where are they going to go if the engine begins to decline and they need to be in the electric space? Okay, this is the MicroCab Villanova. This is our latest development, a product which has literally been developed this year. It embodies all of the R&D that we've been involved with the last 3 years. It's a pre-production prototype. It's left-hand drive for the European, the American, and the Chinese markets. And as I say, it has the fuel cell powertrain that I described beforehand. So, to summarize, we are in a period of flux in cities and across the whole world in terms of transport and travel and mobility. And new players are entering the space all the time, and the old players are shuffling to find a way to stay into it. The conventional car companies are saying, how are we going to work in this new space if it's all changing? We see that big OEMs are developing car clubs, that the big and famous petrol engine car companies are looking for electric vehicles to put into the market and so on. We're seeing a huge amount of rejigging of the space. And we see that perhaps in 2 or 3 decades' time, cities will look entirely different. We won't see the same kind of spaces that we see now. And MicroCab is part of the pioneering group that is changing mobility. And we do see, in fact, a revolution occurring, and we're very happy to be part of that revolution. Thank you.